they also are excited and committed and pained at what is happening today, not just in Niger State, but in most of the northern parts of the country.
Niger State government directs security agencies to rescue remaining abducted Islamia children.
INEC concludes arrangements to begin continuous voter registration nationwide.
There will be new registrants, requests for intrastate and interstate transfers, as well as the replacement of cards as provided by law.
Nigeria Customs Service gives ultimatum the owners of private jets to report for verification.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the ECOWAS Summit, resolutions and reforms.
The resolutions of the ordinary session of the Authority of the Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS will continue to remain indelible among member states. Kingsley.
That's right, Jumai. Now, the reasons are quite obvious. The session took a number of steps to begin institutional and structural reforms to improve the performance and operational efficiency of the regional body.
And to this end, the ECOWAS agreed to reduce the size of the commission from the current 15-commissioner structure to 7-member commission effective March 2022.
Now, according to the body, the reduced management structure, which entails 5 commissioners plus the president and vice president, is expected to save ECOWAS a substantial amount of money that would then go into community projects.
Indeed, Kingsley, and the Accra Summit also agreed to launch ECOWAS single regional currency, popularly known as ECO, in 2027 under its monetary union that has experienced several postponements.
Now, Jumai, one important issue is the one that the summit adopted, which is the report resuscitating the ECOWAS Council of Wise Men. Of course, its sole purpose is to engage in preventive diplomacy with former Nigerian President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, who is currently serving as the regional chief mediator on the Malian crisis, as the chairman of that council.
And other resolutions of the summit include establishment of permanent forum of West African national security advisors to combat existing and emerging security threats, strengthening of ECOWAS humanitarian interventions, disarmament of the mercenary groups, as well as mechanism for rotation of ECOWAS member states to the position of chairmanship of African Union.
Well, the resolutions are quite substantial, no doubt about that. But to what extent will the latest resolutions enhance the efficiency of the regional body and therefore ultimately foster economic integration as well as facilitating the movement of goods and persons, with each country taking responsibility along the line? And what should also be done to ensure the proper takeoff of the ECO currency? And how would the resolutions at Accra strengthen the fight against terrorism and other emerging security issues in the sub-region? These are some of the issues we intend to raise in our conversation segment as we'll discuss the ECOWAS Summit, resolutions and reforms on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I thank you for tuning in. I'm Kingsley Osadola, welcoming you to the program.
And I'm joining my colleague Kingsley to welcome you to the program. We are reaching you live from our network studio here in Abuja. We shall bring you our complimentary segments, including newspaper review, business, among others. But first, let's take our morning highlights of the news with Musbao Danwahab. Good morning, Musbao.
So very good morning, Jumai and Kingsley. Welcome to Venice. 15 out of the abductees from the Salihu Tanko Islamia School, Tegina, have escaped from captivity and are currently taking refuge in Kaduna State. The headmaster of the school, Abubakar Al-Hassan, disclosed this during a meeting with Niger State Governor Abubakar Sani Bello and parents of the abducted children.
None of us here can feel the pains of the parents. We can only think. I know they're in pains. We haven't seen their kids for 3 weeks. But we're being very cautious in terms of operations so that we don't lose innocent lives.
Meanwhile, Niger State Governor Abubakar Sani Bello has given the Joint Task Force and Vigilante Group in the state a marching order to go after the bandits and rescue the remaining abducted children and teachers of Salihu Tanko Islamia School, Tegina. The governor officially gave the order at Kagara Science College in Rafi local government area of Niger State, where 27 students, including others, were abducted in February this year.
And what have you, they also are excited and committed and pained at what is happening today, not just in Niger State, but in most of the northern parts of the country. And we're all very depressed, sad that it has gotten to a point where we're no longer allowed to live our normal lives by bandits, but we have to try our very best not to make them succeed in forcing us to change our ways of life. They started by displacing farmers on their farmlands. Next, they moved to burning farms. Next, they moved to kidnapping children, forcing us to close our schools down. Now they've started attacking Islamic schools, and only God knows what next.
And away from that, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has commended the Jigawa State government for embracing the federal government's Agric Revolution program, describing it as a signpost of success in making the state one of the most peaceful across the country. Instead of this in Birnin Kudu, Jigawa State, when he led a federal government delegation to inspect Malam Alu Agro-Allied Farm in the state.
This project is a clear testimony to the success of the agricultural revolution embarked upon by President Muhammadu Buhari. As His Excellency the Governor of Jigawa said during our courtesy visit this morning, said at least 2 programs of this administration, the Anchor Porous program and the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, have succeeded in revolutionizing agriculture in Nigeria. And I think there's no better testimony to that than what we have seen today at Malam Alu Agro-Allied Farm.
There is CAC too, for those people who want to build a factory. And that support has been there and many are enjoying. And on the rice millers, you get CACs to set up a factory, and you get paddy aggregation, money to buy paddy, working capital. What else can the president do?
President Muhammadu Buhari has appointed George Abang Epungo as the Secretary of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. Excuse me. The appointment is for a fresh tenure of 5 years. Also appointed are board members of the Economic Commission are Lukman Muhammad South, Anumba Adeze Southeast, Kola Rahim Adishina North Central, and Yahya Muhammad Northeast. The appointment is in line with Section 2, Subsection 1 and Section 4 of the EFCC Act 2004. According to the statement, EFCC has been operating without board members since 2015. The names of the appointees will be forwarded to the Senate for confirmation. Preparations have been concluded. Arrangement has been concluded in more than 2,600 registration centers nationwide for the commencement of a continuous voter registration with effect from June 28. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu told media executives of the Commission's readiness during an interagency consultative meeting in Abuja.
To undertake the CVR exercise over a period of at least 1 year. There will be new registrants, requests for intrastate and interstate transfers, as well as the replacement of cards as provided by law.
President Muhammadu Buhari wants Nigerian youth to optimally explore his youth-friendly programs as foundation to fast-track their desire for political leadership. At a maiden Progressives Youth Conference held in Abuja, the president urged them to aspire for a better future by being worthy ambassadors of a united Nigerian.
This conference is therefore very timely, coming up not too long after our party membership registration exercise and just before the commencement of congresses starting from our wards. So I'm quite confident that our deliberations today will have a notable impact on the party's activities and even trickle down to my administration.
Nigeria Customs Service has reiterated that it will sanction owners of private aircraft who fail to report for verification. The service public relations officer Joseph Atta gave the updates midway into its one-month verification exercise.
All such owners or their representatives are to report to room 305 Tariff and Trade Department, Nigerian Customs Service Headquarters, number 3, Abidjan Street, Wuse Zone 3, Abuja, FCT, from Monday 7th June through Tuesday 6th July 2021.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed 86 new cases of COVID-19 and 1 death in Nigeria as of 21st of June 2021. The breakdown of the new infections shows that Lagos State has 52, Ondo has 31, while Adamawa State recorded 3 new cases. Nigeria now has 167,292 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 163,797 were treated and discharged, while 2,118 died of the virus. That's the morning news on Good Morning Nigeria. The program will continue in just a moment with Kingsley and Jumai after this break.
There are certain moments in the day when I need my me time to just unwind and indulge.
What is this?
The Cadbury goodness is in every pack of Cadbury 3-in-1 hot chocolate, making you feel cheerful and pleasant. Enjoy the Cadbury goodness.
Our hands can pick up harmful germs. Safeguard soap not only removes germs, but continues to fight germs even after wash.
With Safeguard, germ regrowth is reduced for 12 hours. So, use Safeguard to safeguard your family to promote healthy habits.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Okay, welcome back. Experts call for more training and capacity building of key actors in the energy sector to broaden the knowledge of players. Well, these are more with Comfort Amadou on Business News.
Pathways to reaching net zero by 2050 have to include first ending energy poverty by 2030.
Nigeria plans to connect more communities to off-grid power and reliable energy sources, as well as reduce carbon emission by 20% by the year 2030, in line with globally endorsed climate change agenda. With governments working to increase contribution to sources of renewable energy mix, experts and partners advocate multilateral approach, capacity building and alliance with relevant agencies to promote the markets of renewable energy, quality and statistics of the sources to attract foreign direct investment to the country.
There is the need to establish a specific fund called Renewable Energy Fund. This is something up to in all other countries who like to have a renewable energy fund where that will be focal point, and whatever fund is going for renewable energy is going from that fund.
There will be a lot of new company creation, and these new companies that generally develop in a quite dynamic way internationally. We see this in all countries where solar energy makes a step to competitiveness, is that many jobs in the order of 100,000 of jobs are going to be created in the next 5 to 10 years.
The opportunity also we're going to have generate revenue in terms of technology acquisition, capacity building, and outright funding from the International Climate Finance is very huge. So we need to diversify our budget space. So we are conducting a research on the possibilities of using these sand dunes to produce silicons. Because when we get silicons, 50% of cost of solar panel will come down.
With Business News, Comfort Amadou.
Thank you, Comfort, for the business package. Coming up next for us now is Newspaper Review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Tovi, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Jumai. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Hi, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria.
That's right. Jumai?
Yes, let's begin with the leadership newspaper. And Nigeria may earn 4.62 billion naira annually from electronic transfer. That's attributed to the World Bank. And the bold headlines we have: search for PMB's successor begins as APC stakeholders list criteria. You find details on page 4. With Rider, we must set agenda for next president now. Okorocha, rise and take your rightful place, party leaders tell youths. Let's forge a better future for APC. That's attributed to President Muhammadu Buhari. And other headlines: COVID-19, UAE slams fresh travel ban on Nigeria. You find details on page 20. Kaduna to conduct local government poll with e-voting. Details on page 10. And World Trade Organization considers Nigeria 3 orders as vaccine production hubs. Months after launch, Ebube Abu yet to get legal backing. And that's it from the leadership newspaper. Kinsley?
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. From above the name flag, we have the following headlines. 774,000 jobs, that's the kicker. Hiccups stall stipend payment. That's on page 7. Plateau Governor and IG launch security vehicles. Monarch pledges support. Emirates Airlines suspends flights to and from Nigeria. Below the name flag, it says Abaribe to APC and PDP don't deny Southeast 2023 presidential ticket. Tough times await illegal arms bearers, Buhari vows. That's the headline for the lead story. And with the rider, APC youth seek 10,000 appointment slots post 2023. APC youths seek 10,000 appointment slots post-2023. Banks renegotiate loans for top borrowers. APC will face big challenge after Buhari says Lawan, that's the Senate president. Niger governor inaugurates security forces. You can see members of the special squad deployed to battle bandits, and the governor there, it's one of the photographs below, addressing them. And that was in Kagara, the emirate that covers Tegina, I believe, where the pupils of an Islamia school were kidnapped over 2 weeks ago. Reprint your exam slips, JAMB tells candidates. That's page 5. Now, it is not all candidates who've been asked to reprint their exam slips. Those candidates affected by the centers, 25 or so of them, blacklisted by JAMB. So they are the candidates who have been advised to reprint their exam slips because they will have an opportunity to write the exam in the coming days. 18 billion naira grant for universities take off. Page 7. Bio.
Thank you, Kinsley. Well, the story that have dominated most of the papers is the story of the President's address to the Youth Congress of the All Progressive Congress. President Muhammadu Buhari said all criminal elements carrying arms against the nation will be brought to justice. Represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, the President said every criminal element that has taken up arms against the peace of the country and its citizens will be brought to book accordingly. He reminded that we have no other country but Nigeria. It is the responsibility of every one of us to work towards its development and advancement. The youth Vice President, who also spoke to the youth, all you youth to work for the unity of Nigeria and avoid stoking the embers of division. He says those waiting in the sidelines, hoping that the country will disintegrate, will be sorely disappointed. He said, I am very sure those of you, the youths sitting here today, will prevent that from happening. He, however, stressed that this country can take all of us, regardless of tribe, religion, gender, or age. He enjoined the youth to seek seriously ways of continually to make the union fairer, more just, and better for all. The Senate President also had this to say. He said, whether we like it or not, the truth is President Muhammadu Buhari remains the person with the bulk of the support APC gets across the country. He adds, however, that when he leaves, he will still have some roles to play. But I dare say that it is after he leaves office that APC will face challenges. He therefore advised that. So we need to do a lot to build this party, and we will need our youths more than ever before. He also pointed out that the Senate, the administration will continue the legacy that has been established by the President administration. He told the youth that the amendment of the Constitution will give significant roles to the youths. Yesterday, Kinsley asked, what has the Niger State government been doing with the overwhelming dominance of banditry and criminality in Niger? Well, Governor Abubakar Bello yesterday constituted a combined security team of the army, police, civil defense, and vigilance, about 1,000 of them, to beef up and take on the gauntlet against criminals who are holding Niger State to prostrate. He commended the personnel and said that in their effort to fight banditry, logistics will be provided and their entitlement allowances will be also provided for. He said most of the bandits who are holding the state to ransom are from outside the country. They are hired to cause problems for us. They started by displacing farmers. Next, they moved to burning farms. Third, to kidnapping and forcing us to close our schools. The governor who met with parents of the 136 peoples of Islamia abducted from Tegina said that government is exploring all avenues for their release. Even we have ruled out payment of ransom, it is time to end the activities of the bandits. The headmaster of the Islamia school, Abubakar Al-Hassan, says that the action of government to combat the bandits is welcome, provided that their pupils will be brought back safely. The Emir of Kagara also called for cooperation from all to support the governor in fighting the banditry.
Well, Bayo, that's to me one of the biggest stories that we are seeing this morning.
Yes.
We saw a bit of it in our news bulletin earlier. Juma, you recall that when our colleague Musbat Danha was reading the news. It is sweet, at least now, that the state governor has gone to visit the families of the persons who were abducted at Tegina. A number of them, of course, obviously children, a few of them teenagers. Some 15 or so of the teachers are said to have escaped. It's giving them the assurance, and the photograph that we saw earlier on the front page of the Nation newspaper also has indicated that, well, the state government is setting up and deploying its own security mechanism to deal with these bandits. But there is a bigger story, if you ask me, namely what the governor said, and we dropped hints of this here and there sometime in the past. The governor says, look, these bandits are foreigners. It means that foreigners are levying war against the Nigerian state and the Nigerian people. What is the reaction of Nigerians to what is happening? And let's see the description that the governor gave. One, they chased farmers off their farmlands. Yes. Two, they burnt down those farms. And then three, now they have started kidnapping children in schools, so that they are also closing down schools. In Zamfara, I'm sure Bayo, you recall a couple of weeks ago, we discussed also in Good Morning Nigeria, where bandits were engaging in protection racketeering, saying, look, villagers must first come to work on their own farms, that is to say the farms of the bandits, before they go to work on theirs. And I was saying the other day that perhaps after a while we're going to have bandits commodities board who would detect how much you can grow or how much you can harvest. You also saw what happened in Borno, where people went to the farms to harvest and they were butchered.
Yes.
So,
rice farmers.
What is happening? Are there forces that are targeting Nigeria's drive towards food sufficiency? Go to the market. I don't know whether you buy or you go. I go to the market. Juma, obviously you go. I'm sorry, I'm not being sexist. See the way prices are skyrocketing of food items. So, is it that places from where we used to import certain kinds of foods, you are having collaboration between these ragtag bandits to say, look, destabilize their farms, destabilize the agricultural system, impact their food security? Because if farmers cannot go to the farms, what are you going to harvest?
Welcome, Kingsley. You know, when they say these people are foreigners, it must have taken them quite some time to get a foothold in the place where they're operating.
Of course.
Yes, they must have homes, they must have families, they must, they can be traced. And one thing I can't wrap around my head is, where can you hide 136 children?
In the bush.
In the bush. Children, no.
In fact, emphasizing
not adults, children.
One paper published a photograph of the guys, the bandits who abducted students of the Federal Government College, Yauri. And if you see them from their comportment, tall, lanky, sleeky guys, they look like Tuareg, who are obviously foreigners. And they are the ones holding us and our education system, our citizens, to ransom. So there's no gainsaying the fact when the president emphasized that they will be brought to book. But the earlier it is done so, the better.
The better, because I still think, Bayo, that, if these people are foreigners, that's why it's so easy to kill Nigerians.
They don't have anything
at stake.
Some of them are from Libya, some of them are from Mali, some of them are from Niger or wherever. But wherever they are from, we must prove to them that the blood and the lives of Nigerians are not for them to take so easily. I'm talking about food prices.
Security,
yes. Certainly is a consequence of the fact that our farmers who are productive can no longer go to farm. And in the interim, the only remedy that can be done is to release food from the grains reserves to beat down the prices until normalcy can be restored. There have been several initiatives.
Can it be sufficient?
Well, in the meantime, that will, if call that half bread, it is better than none. But in the meantime, there are now positive initiatives being taken by state governors to tackle insecurity, rather than lamenting that we are waiting for the federal government or waiting for the center to come and help us.
Yeah, Bayo, that's a good point. At the state government, we have seen that.
Yes.
We have seen that in Kebbi State.
Yes.
We're seeing that now in Niger, and we hope it is sustained.
There was a bold step also in Rivers.
In Rivers,
there was in Lagos.
In Lagos, yeah. But you see, all those anchor borrowers programs and all the agricultural schemes and the financing and funding, if farmers who got these facilities are unable to go to their farms, tend their farms, how will they repay their loans?
Yes.
And I'm saying that from a strategic point of view, we have to interrogate this, even from just the sociology of criminality. Let's take a look at it. I mean, for those who have studied crime and criminality in Nigeria over the decades, you will recall, Bayo, that immediately after the Civil War, that was when we had an upshot in armed robbery. Now, how were the armed robbers operating at that time? In the 70s, in the beginning, when they were highway robbers, they would stand in front, they would stand on the highway, and then, of course, flag down an oncoming vehicle. And because of our respect for human life at the time, of course, the motorists will stop because you have seen a person in the middle of the road. So motorists, of course, who stopped, they got robbed. Then after a while, it became both hazardous for the robbers themselves to stay on the highway or for drivers to stop. Then they started using logs to block the highway. Then, of course, it was escalating. But it was never the case. The point I'm trying to make, Bayo and Juma, is as follows. It was never the case that you had armed robbers firing sporadically at vehicles in motion. At least they did something to destabilize to immobilize the vehicle so that when they got to the occupants, they robbed them and they left. But these bandits and kidnappers you have these days, when vehicles are in motion, they, as the saying goes, spray them with bullets, and then that's the way they carry on. Just to buttress the point that perhaps these persons are probably not Nigerians. Yes.
Well, the other area of crime success too is in the FCT, where the police command neutralized suspected armed robbers who were trying to operate at a hotel in Kubwa. One of the robbers had to pay the supreme sacrifice. He sustained serious gunshot wound and gave up the ghost before he was taken to hospital. However, the Abuja Police Command spokesperson Mariam Yusuf says that they are on the trail of the others who had fled. Also at Kaswandere, in the suburb around Gwagwalada area, Wandan Lami Abubakar has been arrested. He was found to be charged for culpable homicide for stabbing a woman and collecting her techno. Unfortunately, that woman died from that. Later on, the investigating police officers discovered a sharp knife with the chap and the telephone he stole from the lady. Because of a technophone, he stabbed the woman and killed her.
Took a life.
Unfortunately, well, if the person is arrested, he has to face it. Bayo, there is a developing story. We've just been advised by our news crew that this is coming from BC Kazim, who is the Corps Education Officer of the Federal Road Safety Corps. It says that the Federal Road Safety Corps has reported a burning tanker around Romona Trailer Park at Ogere. Ogere is on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. That's Highway A1 in the highway code. So the Federal Road Safety Corps has reported a burning tanker around Romona Trailer Park at Ogere. A number of vehicles involved cannot be ascertained just yet, as the Ogun State Fire Service and FRSC, that's the Road Safety Cooperatives, are managing the traffic situation. Motorists are therefore being advised to be extra careful or to avoid the expressway for now, as diversion is being contemplated. Once again, there is a burning tanker at Romona Trailer Park at Ogere, which is on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. A number of vehicles caught in the inferno, not yet ascertained. Motorists are being advised to be extra careful if you are close by or otherwise to avoid that expressway in the meantime. This is coming from BC Kazim of the Federal Road Safety Corps.
And they'll be getting details of
the details in subsequent bulletins. Thank you very much. Well, yes. I don't know. We're going to have to sign you up, but before we do, I'm not sure whether Juma and I were on set on that occasion. Probably about a little over a week ago. You recall, Bayo, there was a report of a South African woman who gave birth to 10 children.
10. Yes.
It's turned out, according to latest reports, that is, as Nigerians would say, 419.
What?
The woman has been said not to have been pregnant at any time, probably has a mental case, and the 10 babies are nowhere to be found. So there is no record of a woman who has given birth to 10 children in South Africa.
In fact, on that occasion, they said they already had 2 children before the other 10.
Yeah, twins, yes.
And the husband was out of job. He had no job. And everybody was very sympathetic, not knowing that it was just a con.
That's right. So, Baya Toebe, we appreciate your being around. We'll see you again tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with ECOWAS and the outcome of its ordinary summit that took place in Accra, Ghana. Reforms and resolutions.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
Our hands can pick up harmful germs. Safeguard soap not only removes germs, but continues to fight germs even after wash.
With Safeguard, germ regrowth is reduced for 12 hours. So, use Safeguard to safeguard your family to promote healthy habits.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
Welcome back. And to begin our discussion, let's take this background report on the Accra Summit resolutions.
The establishment of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, on 28th May 1975 is to, among other objectives, promote economic relations and activities among member states. At the helm of the executive arm of the community is the President of the Commission, appointed by the authority for a non-renewable period of 4 years. He is assisted by a Vice President and 13 commissioners. And this reflects the full representation of all 15 member states in the organization. Over the years, ECOWAS has been working with this structure to achieve its set goals and vision. As much as the Commission has been quite responsible in its duties with successful results to show, many issues have been hampering the growth and development of the Commission. These, many say, must be addressed through restructuring, and part of which include the adoption of the single currency called ECO, which will be accessible and be the mode of exchange by all member states. Aside this, there is the call for a reduction of commissioners from 15 to 7, and with the just concluded summit of the regional leaders in Accra, Ghana, agreed to, it is expected to take effect from March 2022. The existing 15-member commission of 13 commissioners plus the president and the vice president is considered top-heavy and expensive, and so the reduction is expected to save ECOWAS substantial amounts to be utilized in the execution of community projects. The Accra Summit also adopted the report resuscitating the ECOWAS Council of the Wise for Preventive Diplomacy.
Continues to value the work of our organization, which is held up as a model of regional engagement on the continent, and we must continue to do whatever is required to strengthen it.
How effective will this restructuring be, and will there be equitable representation amongst member states? What effect will it have on the resuscitation of ECOWAS, especially when many refer to the Commission as toothless bulldog? These are some questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly.
Thank you very much for that backgrounder. Now with us in the studios to discuss this issue, let's welcome one of our regular foreign policy analysts, Ambassador Bulus Lolo, who is a former permanent secretary in the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Lolo, delighted to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, and good morning, Kingsley.
Also here with us in the studios is Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale. He's of the Department of Diplomacy and International Relations, based University, also based here in Abuja. Dr. Omale, pleasure to have you this
morning. Good morning.
Thank you.
And also joining us from the United Kingdom via Zoom is Paul Ejime, International Affairs Analyst. Glad to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
All right, so let's begin the conversation in-house. Let's say charity beginning with us right here at home before we go over to Paul Ejime. Gentlemen, the Accra Summit of ECOWAS leaders, of course, ended with a number of resolutions. The ECO currency is there, the issue of insecurity, resuscitating the Council of the Wise, now headed by Goodluck Jonathan, but more importantly, seeking to restructure the number of commissioners from 15 to 17. I would like first to just have an overview from Ambassador Bulus Lolo in terms of the resolutions that emerged from that summit at the weekend. Do you think that these matters faithfully implemented that will lead to a rejuvenated ECOWAS?
Yes, and thank you very much. The recently concluded summit in Accra, in my view, is one of the most robust summits that ECOWAS has had in recent times, not least because of the restructuring, as you said, of the Commission. But more importantly, the direction of the world today is such that you need an ECOWAS that is lean, an ECOWAS that is efficient, and an ECOWAS that can respond on the march to issues as they emerge. And in our sub-region, we have Mali to contend with, we have Burkina Faso, and other spots that we cannot take our eyes from. And so if in Accra, a decision was taken, and of course, the mandate given to the former President Goodluck Jonathan to head the Council of the Wise. It is because that is a mechanism that is much needed as an early warning mechanism to help in managing conflict situations in the sub-region. And the Council of the Wise, by its own intent, is to help the Commission and the Authority of Heads of State itself with counsel on a number of issues. You talked about insecurity, and I know the Ministerial Council too on the Security Council met, as well as looking at the whole issue today of can we be more integrated when in every little section of the sub-region you go, you have pockets of tension that are rearing their ugly heads, largely because of the management of our political processes and how we do things to address the well-being of the people. And so if you look at and on balance what was the outcome of Accra, one must hold one's head high. And if you're a Nigerian in that case, as we are, we should be proud too that this was a showing that Nigeria showed its leadership and got what it demanded out of Accra.
Okay, thank you so much, Ambassador Lalo. Let me come to Lolo. Let's come to Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale. He said robust, incisive, and almost definitive reforms in the sub-region. Mali was on the front burner all through, you know, with suspensions, but not sanctions here, even with the civilian prime minister. What's your take on that?
Okay, on the issue of Mali, first of all, let me join Ambassador Lolo to commend ECOWAS leaders for this summit that held in Accra. The summit, for a very long time, ECOWAS has been very comatose and docile. Reading through the communique at the end of that meeting shows that they are beginning to wake up from the slumber. ECOWAS has been dogged by a lot of challenges, reading through the communique, it gives hope that at least for once they are beginning to put the issues on the front burner of discourse within the sub-region. On the issue of Mali, a threat anywhere is a threat to everybody. And it is clear that all the gains that was achieved in the last 20 years in terms of democratizing the sub-region is almost, is rearing, military intervention is rearing its ugly head. Our political instability is beginning to crop into the sub-region. Look at the case that happened in Niger after the election. If it were not God intervention, something. Look at the case of Cote d'Ivoire when Alassane Ouattara won the election. Look at the case of Gambia when Yahya Jammeh lost the election. So instability was beginning to crop in, and the leaders have to take this type of proactive measures by instituting the Council of the Wise to intervene by activating preventive diplomacy, as the case may be. So I think it's a proactive step. But the problem now is, having said this in the communique, in terms of actual implementation, what happens? You could see from the communique, members are not contributing as they should contribute to the funds of the ECOWAS, in as much as they have set up committees to try and encourage countries to make their contribution. ECOWAS cannot function without the needed funds. Most of the activities, even the Council of the Wise, they cannot function if they don't have the funding to move around, do their research, do shuttle diplomacy, interact with all the contending groups, and so on and so forth. So it's a very big challenge. And then, like most of us, most of Africa, where we keep on creating, duplicating. You know, if you look at the ECOWAS structure, there are lots of duplication. There are lots of groups that have been put on ground, even outside the main commission of 17 that is being streamlined, there are several other.
Can you specify?
Yes, you have a peace and conflict resolution committee, while you have the committee, the commission on political and social change. You have other committees within crisis intervention group of ECOWAS. You have other committees at the level of the commission, and so there are lots of and all these things there's no fund to fund most of these programs, and it's not taking a lot of programs that matter. You could just, if ECOWAS is facing economic integration, for example, in the next 5 years, we finish with economic integration. If it's security challenges, but they seem to take so many things at a time, and then before you know it, like if you look at the communique, a critical analysis of the communique will show you that so many issues, and it will be too much for them to implement. In the case of the ECHO, it has been there for a very long time. It has been there for more than, it was supposed to take off in 2020. It couldn't take off. Now they are projecting 2027. The division between, and one of the things that the communique didn't address is the latest division between the Francophone and Anglophone countries. That bridge between the two is not there. Some of the Anglophone countries went to Macron and started announcing taking off of ECHO. That compromised the sovereignty of West Africa, because only them, and they are still tying the West African economy to France. Because you know, when I watched that thing on television, I was seriously touched, because okay, sir.
All right, Dr. Omale, thank you very much. Well, of course, we'll get into the details of some of those key issues, including the ECHO currency that you just mentioned. Let's go over now to Paul Ejime, who is with us via Zoom. You can see him there on the right side of your screen. Paul, of course, you are an expert on ECOWAS issues. In your opinion, is the outcome of the Accra summit potentially a game changer for the regional body?
Well, I think, let me join the ambassador and Dr. Omale in saying, well, there is for a change for over some time. This is a good one, because, like he said, it appears that reality is dawning on those who are in charge of ECOWAS. That this is an organization that held up a lot of hope of all the region, what they call the regional economic communities, the RECs in Africa. ECOWAS was a trailblazer in the way it handled conflict management and resolution. Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and all that. To the point that, well, it's more known for for that security issue than for the core agenda of fostering economic integration. But they are all also intertwined. You can't have economic progress where there is no peace. So back to what happened. You have all summarized it. The collapsing or bringing the commission now to a 7-member one, 5 commissioners plus the president and then the vice president. It's been there. And what has happened is that when ECOWAS became a commission in 2007 from an executive secretariat, it had 9. The idea was to have 7 commissioners and then the president and vice president. But suddenly, every member wanted to have a commissioner for a 15-member organization. It is not so at the AU. It is not so at the EU. So how they came about that is still baffling. But now they are beginning to realize that it was a bad decision, because this is a period where you need to achieve more with less. The money, even if it was you had all the limited resources, you have to manage it. But before we begin to celebrate too much about bringing it to 7, the devil, they say, is in the details. You need now to go and have, because the head matters. ECOWAS, apart from this, there is one they call the rotational issue, going by alphabetical order or zoning. That has not helped. I think they have to move forward now to look for for people who with competence, with vision, like AU. AU, they involve external consultants to be able to get somebody who has a track record that can, particularly for the presidency of the commission, because who is the driver? He's the man that will sit on at the wheel and do things. You can begin to do things with the other ones about commissioners, but for the presidency, they have to go beyond just making it a 5 or 7 member commission to now bring somebody ahead that is not malleable, that is not afraid to take decisions because they are always referencing to their presidents instead of to the commission. Allegiance should not be to the country where you come from. It has to be for the community. Almost 400 million citizens in that community. They are. You can see what is happening. The index, the development index, shows that ECOWAS, members are suffering. Poverty rate is members is high. Insecurity is another thing. Unemployment and crime. So you need to now go back and have people who are ready, not just brought by their heads, nominated by their heads of state. Yes, you can do that. The country can, but make it competitive so that you get somebody who the best. That is what you need. Otherwise, ECOWAS, like Dr. Mala was saying, talked about comatose, talked about recession of democracy. Look at the elections that have been conducted over the years. For the past 10 years, ECOWAS has been in decline, and now risks losing its relevance. I think this bringing it to 7, a lean, effective, efficient management with somebody at the top, the leadership that is dynamic, visionary, and then knows about the integration, knows about taking decisions, being proactive. It is not because if you want to take any decision, you reference your head of state that no. We know it is an intergovernmental organization, but there is you have gone beyond your national to get to what you call subnational. You are now at the head. You can take decisions. It used to be so. It hasn't been so in the last 10 years. I think they have to go back there if they are going to be able to crack the challenges that are facing them. There is health, COVID, insecurity. There is a maritime problem, Gulf of Guinea. They mentioned that in the communique. ECO, they have mentioned that. It is also that lack of political will that has allowed France almost hijacking what a project, single currency. You cannot have integration without single currency or monetary union. So it behoves the countries to move forward and move ahead. There has been so many postponements. If you don't wait for everybody to get on board, let those who are ready move on, those who can get the convergence criteria that is required. Otherwise, and look at the way Mali is being handled. It is that lack of, political will and commitment. And then, sitting on the fence, that has allowed the military to now, if care is not taken, military will come back to and interfere. In Mali, the military is actually running the show. ECOWAS is just sitting on the fringe. They talked about having a civilian-led transition government. But what do we have? Colonel Goita, after becoming vice president, has taken over. And the military has about 4 key positions in the Malian transition government: defense, security, regional administration, and then reconciliation. So the others are just playing second fiddle. And then the resuscitation of the Council of the Wise. It used to be Council of Elders. It is all part of a way of, trying to nip conflicts in the bud before it becomes, before they escalate. Look at Africa. We used to have that. When things are going wrong, elders and leaders of community will sit down and try to settle disputes. But we've forgotten that we are going for the modern one that does not suit the African system. We need to, even in Mali, they used to have what they call Toguna. Toguna is men sitting under the hut and then being able to discuss and, resolve issues.
Okay.
But key to this is governance. You have to deliver justice and then inclusivity. Let me stop here for now.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul Ejima. You've raised a cocktail of issues. We will, of course, return to you in the course of the conversation. Juma, I just want to bring in Ambassador Bulus Lolo again, because one sore point that we keep hearing about ECOWAS as an international institution has to do with the level of funding and therefore commitment by a number of states. Indeed, the rationale for seeking to slash the number of commissioners from 15 to 7 has to do with funding. I understand that Nigeria has been a principal funder of ECOWAS. Why does Nigeria take on this huge responsibility of funding ECOWAS? And as a corollary to that question, why do other members of ECOWAS not put their money where their mouth is?
Well, again, thank you, and I can understand why everyone is talking about the number of issues that concern ECOWAS. First, let me clarify that ECOWAS, at its inception, was supposed to be focused on economic development. Since 1975, when ECOWAS came into being, much as it was intended to be an economic organization, its preoccupation, if you look at the balance of issues, has been more on political issues than economic. And then to your direct question on why Nigeria is funding or bearing the largest share of the budget, first, you do have scale of assessment. This applies at the United Nations, in the African Union, and then here in ECOWAS, based on your economic might, and where then your income level is at a certain threshold, it is expected that you will pay a percentage. And it translates in the case of ECOWAS that Nigeria bears up to 65% or even more of the ECOWAS budget. Now, if there are issues about other member states not contributing, it is a function of a number of factors, either because they are not committed to the organization or they simply do not want to bear their responsibility. And this is the area where in 2013 or 14, when the commission was increased from 9 to 15, I remember then I was in Ethiopia and I felt horrified because I felt that Nigeria failed in that instance, because you cannot give each and every country, including countries that pay less than 2% of the budget, a post of commissioner that is even more when it comes to the income and the cost of maintaining that commissioner would be higher than the amount that the country was contributing to the commission. But it's not peculiar to ECOWAS. Even the UN is not immune to funding issues. It's just that the scale of it is different. The African Union is dogged by the same malaise of poor funding. In fact, if you go to the African Union, about 98% of the program budget of the African Union is funded by external partners. Contribution by member states is barely 2%. Now, how do you demonstrate your commitment? How do you demonstrate ownership? How do you want to exercise your sovereignty if you don't put your heart where your mouth is? With ECOWAS, and I pray that with this restructuring, Nigeria will look deep into how the resources are managed. Will look also into how services are delivered, so that not only because ECOWAS is headquartered in Nigeria, but more because Nigeria is the largest contributor to the ECOWAS budget. We need to dictate the direction of ECOWAS. And when you put your money as an investment, you expect some benefits to come to you. There have to be tangible benefits that come to Nigeria and Nigerians for what we are doing in ECOWAS. And I hope that not just government, but ordinary Nigerians will take an interest to see and know whether or not ECOWAS is serving their interest. But, as Dr. Ejime said, ECOWAS is Africa's foremost regional economic community. It is also the largest. It has the largest market on the continent. There is great potential in ECOWAS, but that potential will have to be tapped, as well then as let the owners of these potentials guard them jealously. If not, I'll use the word vultures, but in an advised manner. By vultures, I mean people who don't kill, but they like to eat. That's what I mean.
Scavengers.
Scavengers, indeed. Ambassador Lolo, I will be staying with you for a bit. Dr. Omale raised a very fundamental issue. He said the ECOWAS used to be, sort of docile, but now in this Accra summit, it's like they're being more proactive. But what he's talking about is the communique is so loaded. Implementation is key. As we continue to play the big brother role in Nigeria, we fund them, but the respect isn't there.
You'll excuse me if I keep going back to what I know by saying, take even UN resolutions at every session. In fact, member states, and this is the fault of governments, tend to adopt more resolutions than they have the capacity to implement. So if you find the ECOWAS resolutions out of Accra to be loaded, they are hardly new. They are carryover from previous discussions. Twice a year, ECOWAS meets. Now, the president of the commission is expected and normally renders a report every 6 months to the commission. But it's one thing to agree on a document, but it's another entirely to carry it through. And this is where accountability comes to play. For me, I would love to see us having that capacity and capability to assess productivity and equally monitor and evaluate results, so that it's not just sitting to say today you are setting up this body or that other commission, but to see whether or not you have the ability to follow through. And that's why the many resolutions that have been adopted, just like policies in this country, were they to have been fully and effectively implemented, we would not be where we are. So in a nutshell, if I've answered your question, it is simply to say that we adopt more and our ambition is higher than our strength, and that needs to be checked. And I do hope that it is this lean commission now that will lead us in that direction. You don't have to put your finger in every little hole there is, but press and block a particular hole that threatens you the most.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Bulus Lolo. Let's bring in again Dr. Adoye Omale. Dr. Omale, that's a point that I would like us to clarify, because you also, in a sense, you were referencing that it was amplified by Paul Ejime. And Ejime says that ECOWAS is in decline, that in the last 10 years we have seen how contentious issues have tended to overrun a number of member states. And I was just wondering whether that in fact mirrors the reality. Because yes, there was crisis in the Gambia following the elections, but ECOWAS intervened, and President Muhammadu Buhari, of course, took the lead in that regard. And Yahya Jammeh had no option but to go into exile. And we also saw what happened in Burkina Faso. Blaise Compaoré was on the verge of setting that country ablaze, and some soft landing was arranged for him. Well, Mali has been intractable for a number of years. It remains a sore point, no question about that. But if you look elsewhere around West Africa, in terms of political stability now, not the issue of insecurity, will it be a fair assessment to say that ECOWAS has been in decline?
Well, you know, when we talk about political instability, it's not only about regime change. We are talking about conduct of elections in most of the West African states, even where democracy exists. The quality of democratic elections within the sub-region has always been a source of dispute, especially to a lot of scholars. If you look at take for example the elections in Niger Republic. If you look at the contending issues, yes, the sitting president lost, like in Nigeria, and there were issues as a result of the election. But what are the quality of the elections? Are they deploying IT technology in most of the elections that is conducted within the sub-region? Are the electoral commissions independent? Issue of good governance within the sub-region. Those are some of the issues that are causing this instability. Issues of good governance, issues of credible elections, and ECOWAS being a body at that level should be in the forefront of ensuring that these processes within the sub-region will create a lot of stability. So stability is not only in the area of regime change. There will be more stability if the processes of governance are very credible. If a lot of reforms within the sub-region and with ECOWAS leading the charge. But when we say ECOWAS is docile, is that most of these things are happening, and ECOWAS is not. Yes, they create a lot of studies, ECOWAS Good Governance Project, and so on and so forth at the level of the ECOWAS. But are those resolutions being implemented? Are this monitoring mechanism put in place? I know that under the AU they had the NEPAD and the African peer review mechanism. Are we peer reviewing what we are doing within the ECOWAS system? Are we telling ourselves, look, gentlemen, what is happening in your country is not right. It's affecting all of us in the sub-region. Can you amend this? Can you amend that? So those things are not there. And that's the role ECOWAS is supposed to play to enhance the stability. Yes, when crisis bursts out, they will institute a committee of the wise who will go and intervene and so on and so forth. But we want, what the argument is that for there to be stability, you have to get your good governance right in most of the countries. For there to be stability, you have to tackle corruption holistically.
But there are still national sovereign responsibilities, so that a supranational entity such as ECOWAS cannot pretend to be running the affairs of its individual member states.
It cannot, but you see, issues of, for example, what are the issues that create instability? Discontentment of the people. ECOWAS should be concerned about that. It's not that you are running. It's about you are putting the issues, just like the United Nations, you are putting the issues in the front burner. You are taking proactive steps. You are using preventive diplomacy. You are not reacting after the crisis begins. You are putting proactive, fundamental issues on the ground. Okay, look at issues of light weapons. Even the internal crisis we are having, movement of persons, they have not even sat down to review. Based on the crisis they are having in Nigeria and some of these countries, how can ECOWAS now look at this document again and review this thing so that the free movement of persons will not be abused by people who are moving around the sub-region and creating instability within the sub-region? What can be put on ground that can mop up light weapons? Yes, there was a committee in ECOWAS that was mopping up light weapons and small arms. How effective have those committees work in mopping up these light weapons and small arms? So they are not carrying an assessment of even policies that are on ground. They are not taking, they are not evaluating, they are not reviewing. That's why we say they are docile. Ideally, what happens is that there's no enough intellectual input and capacity within the system to say, look, this is where we are, this is where we are going, this is where we want to be in the next 20, 30 years. That's why we are talking about this issue of docility.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Omale. Let's join Paul Ejime. Paul Ejime, security is a very huge problem in most parts of ECOWAS, and the body approved the security plan in September 2019. But almost 2 years after, members have still been urged to implement. The AU at its last sitting, the theme was silencing the guns. And how do we prevent all this security, from happening in our region, and the small arms and light weapons proliferation into our region? Insecurity is the high point, because when we look at the Africa Free Trade Agreement that is just getting off, if there's no security in the sub-region, how do we align ourselves with the profit that we can get from the after?
Yes, that is at the heart of, you cannot have economic progress or development when you do not have security or peace. And that is why you have both are, interrelated, symbiotic. What has happened, I would like us to look at it from two levels, the micro and the macro. That is, national members at their level will have to play a role to make their own boundaries, their own territory peaceful. And then you now extrapolate that and get members, your neighbors, and then get the regional organization. Because if an organization is as strong as its weakest member, so you cannot say you are isolated or you are living on an island. No, even when you think things are going well, you also have to look beyond you to see, because what happens? We are Africans. We live community life. What happens in Ghana, can affect the neighbors. In fact, the world is a village. So you cannot sleep when your neighbor's house is on fire. So these are the levels. At the national level, elections, like we said, there are drivers and triggers of this insecurity or conflict that we're talking about. It comes from governance at all levels, economic, political. What government is about? It is about the welfare of the people, about ensuring respect for human rights, about their well-being. Something like employment, something like social. You notice that some of our Africans, even though we have our people servicing or manning the health systems in other climes, the health system in our region is weak and underfunded. Okay, why has that been so? And look at how we are struggling with COVID. We don't have anywhere, even in Africa. Only South Africa and Egypt can are producing the vaccine. None in West Africa. So these are the issues. But you have to prioritize them. You can't, like the ambassador is saying, and then Dr. Molly, you now prioritize, take them one by one. But at the center is, how do you govern? You cannot. What has happened remember, ECOWAS regions came from this history of dictatorships, and we thought we were exiting that to go into party system. But they are now using that, they hold sham elections and then pretend that people are now using that to hang on to power. You hear about tenure elongation and all that. So you need to look at the root causes of this insecurity at the national level, and then you now capture it at the regional level. For instance, we talked about this Council of the Wise. It is not only it's not interference. It is that when there is trouble, the early warning, you do not wait until it becomes one that you now be hiring, taking jets to be moving every week to shuttling. No, begin now. And when you hold elections, or you notice that there is no level playing field, opposition leaders are being detained and treated badly, you didn't say anything, that will snowball. And that is why what is happening in ECOWAS is not so much a lack of normative framework or protocols or decisions. It is implementation. I can tell you that this same ECOWAS suspended countries like Guinea, Niger, and even Cote d'Ivoire when they noticed that their leaders were not playing. Jammeh, what is it? Yahya Jammeh of the Gambia. ECOWAS refused to send observers to observe the election that he held in 2011 because the commission said no. We have done our fact-finding mission, and we noticed that it is not you are not playing according to the rule, and they never recognized Jammeh's that result that Jammeh claimed he won. But because the others, nobody joined ECOWAS in that. AU just played. AU that has a commission there that talks about human rights was watching while the rights of citizens were being violated. But what happened? Yahya Jammeh carried his dictatorship until 2016 that he now was forced out. That is the issue. You have to begin from, don't wait until a saw becomes, something, a cut now becomes a big wound. That is what ECOWAS should do. There are protocols about democracy and good governance. There is the one that says, is zero tolerance for, taking or maintaining power through any other means other than constitutional. That is what is happening. Niger almost went into it. Mali is in it now, and unless care is not taken to handle Mali in a way that you have to be firm, resolute, and committed, and also in doing what you are doing, make sure that you are not being inconsistent. There is no hypocrisy. You cannot be trying to dictate to others how they will behave when you are not maintaining democracy in your own country. I think that is the deficiency, that is the deficit, and that is where a very competent, forward-looking, dynamic, proactive, and then visionary leadership is important that can drive the process. Because once you don't get it right there, you can get all the commissioners, but if the man at the head is, once they notice that is weak, the commissioners are not going to, but if they know that the general, like is in the army, your general gives you authority, let them lead by example. That has not happened, and that is why there is now recession. People, let us pretend about it. This is not where the region ought to be. And it is because the member countries are weak, and that weakness has now been transported into the regional level. But it can be, this is a good beginning that they have said, but let them walk the talk. Let them bring somebody that can bring leaders, that can make a difference. It is not about you and you. That goes from national to regional level. Leadership is about service. It's about, look at the community. Like I mentioned, almost 400 million people. waiting for ECOWAS to deliver. And all you do is you find people junketing, thinking that, they are there on their own merit. You are just there as one in a million that has come to bring what you can to improve, to better the lives of citizens. That is not happening the way it should happen, and it must happen if ECOWAS can regain its a case now of past glory, and nobody lives on past glory for long.
All right, Paul Ejime, thank you very much there for your comments. I'm sure, but some persons will disagree with the conclusions that you're arriving at to say that ECOWAS is living on its past glory. I see Ambassador Bulus Lolo smiling. Omale is deadpan in his appearance. Probably you're also in agreement with Paul Ejime.
He says no.
He says no. Yeah, that's right. He doesn't agree with Paul Ejime. Gentlemen, we are going to have to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Dialogue, empathy, love and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
The Sports Parliament, your weekly sports program, is back to the studio every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. live on the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest television network. Watch out for the parliamentarians with renewed vigor and zest. Mr. Speaker with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. Sports Parliament, a must-watch. Sports Parliament, the home of sports verdict. The highs have it.
You're welcome back, and this is still Good Morning Nigeria, and we've been discussing the ECOWAS summit and matters arising. Ambassador Lolo, we're discussing during the break, and I would like to throw this question to you. As a body, how do we begin to demand reforms, accountability, and good governance in ECOWAS?
Well, thank you for bringing this question up. Let me very quickly just make clear a few things so we understand exactly what is at stake. Out there, people think and want to see ECOWAS behave as a government. It is not. There has been and still a continuing attempt at the African Union to have an African Union government. That has not taken place, because if you want to have such a government, member states must surrender their sovereignty. It has not happened in ECOWAS. And number two, the notion of good governance, we use it, it's so popular, it's very appealing. But what do we mean by good governance? You can have corporate governance, you can have social governance, and a whole gamut of areas in which governance comes to play. So when you talk of good governance without putting it in a context, you run into difficulties. What is good governance to say a development banker is not the same as a human rights specialist. And what is good governance to a human rights specialist will not be to an environmentalist. And by the time you look at the areas of focus of these persons, you discover then that we've talked about electoral processes in West Africa, where sham elections have been held, and in the context of the countries where the elections took place, they would tell you that they were democratic because parties contested, electoral commissions supervised, and results were announced. But what often leads or takes place, let's say in the Gambia, where Jammeh wanted to perpetuate himself, the opposition in fact was emasculated, and he would have gone ahead to win that election in the high 90s, not just low 90s, very high 90s, because he would have manipulated the results. So to him, that would have been good governance. But now, if we put out accountability, put out openness, put out inclusivity, put out equity, fairness, and the rest of it as the indices that you use to measure good governance, then across the board you can say, okay, there is good governance here and good governance there. But back in the context of ECOWAS, ECOWAS is as good as the member states are. And if ECOWAS, we feel today we are not happy with what is happening at the Commission, we must also question what is happening in the individual countries. It is the individual countries that will give effect to the performance of the Commission, I dare say. And for me as a Nigerian, and having been in my past life in diplomacy and foreign affairs, I believe that it is a call to duty for Nigeria to chart a new path on West Africa. Not just on West Africa. 2 months ago, Kingsley, you remember, on this program, we had a session on foreign policy review. Okay. I advocated then, as I do this morning, that there should be a foreign policy review conference in Nigeria. The last took place in Kuru in 1986. It is time for another review. And it is this review that will help us to set an agenda, define our principles, and then come out with our mechanism for implementation. We need to put the right tools to perform the right tasks. We have a situation where sometimes you repeat the same mistakes over and over and over, but you expect different results. It will never happen. And until we get it right, until Nigeria then says, this is the ECOWAS we want for the 21st century, one that will meet the needs of the people, one that, and we've talked about security and insecurity. It is our porous borders in the various member states that is allowing the small arms and light weapons to flow, and the traffickers as well.
You know, Ambassador Bulus, I want to stay with you and bring in this last point you just made, along with what Dr. Mali said earlier, that it appears that sometimes ECOWAS is unable to catch its breath to review what went on before, to review its own agenda for action, and to say, look, how far did we go, what went wrong, how do we fix it? I'm bringing this issue now because we're talking about insecurity and small arms and light weapons, a topic we also discussed here on a number of occasions on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, the leaders in Accra, who met in Accra, agreed to establish a permanent forum of West African national security advisors. Yeah. I recall when we were discussing the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, the first public relations officer, Commissioner of Police Frank Kumba, did say that there is supposed to be in existence a committee of ECOWAS Inspectors General of Police.
Yeah.
But it doesn't appear to be functioning. And that each country is supposed to have its own responsibility in checking the flow of arms. so that it doesn't then end up in one country. I mean, if you are a producer nation, Ghana, of course, is said to be the leading producer of arms and small arms in West Africa. Small arms and other things land from different parts of the world in other countries. But each of these other countries appears not to be taking its own responsibility. And here we are saying, okay, create a permanent forum of national security advisors. And Ambassador Bulus, earlier you were also talking about the fact that sometimes we just create these things, you know, and wish. How do we suggest or advise that, look, let's go back and see pre-existing structures, pre-existing committees, how well have they functioned, rather than creating new ones, increasing the expenditure, and the money, of course, is not readily available because subscriptions are low.
Well, again, ECOWAS is the sum total of its individual parts. And by that I mean it is made up of 15 member states. And you rightly pointed out that it is the responsibility of each of these members to control its borders. It is also the responsibility of each of the members to cooperate with one another and keep faith with what is agreed to. And when it comes to the number of bodies that have been created, I think the temptation often is to respond to challenges as they emerge. So anytime there is something new, you would see the members saying, okay, let's set up a body to address that particular issue, forgetting that unless you link them up as a chain, they will exist in silos. And it is these silos today that are given as a problem. But the recent creation of a permanent body, I read that in the communique of National Security Advisors. And I said to myself, if this body is going to be effective, I only hope that they will also put in place a mechanism for them to meet, not just meet, but have an agenda that will drive the work of the National Security Advisors. Because you can have a National Security Advisor in name that does not perform the function and does not carry out the responsibility of a National Security Advisor. It depends on the clime where that office exists and whether or not the best use is being made of it. But the long and short of it is, if we want a new ECOWAS, then we must go back individually to our home states and do what is expected of us. And in our individual home states too, we must do what serves the interest of the people the best and the most. Because failure in government, failure to meet the needs of the people, failure to arise and do that which is expected at the right time will translate into failure externally.
Ambassador Lolo, thank you so much. Let's now talk about another issue on the front burner during the summit, and that is COVID-19 pandemic, which is still around. And ECOWAS in its latest resolved that members should continue with containment measures as the vaccines are limited in supply. Dr. Omale, what do you make of it? We are Africans, and we know there are so many medicinal plants and everything abound in the West African sub-region. Why are we not thinking of producing our own vaccine, but depending on vaccines from foreign countries, from developed countries?
I think it's because of our mentality. You know, we like we have been saying since, we don't have the confidence to do the most rudimentary of things. Our dependent nature. We always believe that, oh, if it's not AstraZeneca or Oxford or Johnson & Johnson, nothing good can come out of here. So we already have a mindset, which is very, very wrong. And when you go to all these companies that in Europe and other parts of the world that are manufacturing this vaccine, you discover that there are a lot of Africans, West Africans, who are working there with the idea. But we have a mindset, and our leadership are also not interested in carrying proactive measures, doing research, and then coming out with things like vaccine, which ordinarily, once you know the formula, it shouldn't be very difficult to produce. But we have a lot of challenges. Like I said, in the whole communique, I didn't see the West African Power Project mentioned. I didn't see the highways, the railway, all the things that would have integrated us as a people. I didn't see those things. And when I talk about the communique not addressing, like Ambassador said earlier, the whole idea of ECOWAS was supposed to be an economic integration body so that people can maintain their sovereignty. You see, one of the challenges with ECOWAS, which summarizes all what we have been saying this morning, is how much of their sovereignty are they willing to donate? Individual of the 15 countries, how many of their sovereignty are they willing to donate? I respected President Buhari when he shut our borders, because it was becoming, our economy went into recession because our border was too porous. Rice was being smuggled through Badagry. If you go to around Kebbi, used cars were being smuggled in, everything. So our economy was going down. The president has to say, no, enough is enough. Shut the border. And look at the president of Benin, Talon, Boniayi, they were all rushing here to beg that the border should be thrown open. So if there's one thing President Buhari did that, to my mind, that I've always appreciated, was the shutting of our borders. Because we have to tell our West African neighbors that, look, we are big brother, but we cannot die because we are big brother. And that is the message, I think, going forward, just like the question you asked, Ambassador, going forward, our big brother role should be reciprocated, and we cannot just be a dumping site because we are big brothers. So in the communique, I saw issues of borders. Almost everybody was now protecting their own entity. So how much, one of the challenges that ECOWAS will have to grapple with is how much of their sovereignty are individual countries willing to surrender. Then the mischievousness in the organization is very latent. 5 Francophone countries, 5 Anglophone countries, and then 10 Francophone, 10 Francophone countries, and then 5 Anglophone countries. And they use that numerical strength at every point in time, backed by France, to undermine these things that we are talking about.
Well, not 10 Francophone. You also have Lusophone countries.
Yes, of course.
Ghana, Bissau. Sorry, I said Ghana. Guinea-Bissau.
Yes.
Cape Verde.
But ideally, there's the Anglophone countries.
You want to bunch them together?
Yes, the Anglophone countries were always at the receiving end, especially because out of the 400 million population, half of it is Nigeria.
But the big brother rule we seem to assume, like my mother would say, don't you think that they're just gathering sand under our feet?
That is the point I'm making, because out of the 400 million population of the sub-region, Nigeria alone is over 200 million. So that already, we are a threat as far as they see us. We are already a dominant player within the sub-region. And all this gang up against Nigeria, to the extent that even small elections that are held within the sub-region, there are gang up. Ambassador knows some of the committees just for Nigeria to chair, they will be gang up, and then they will bring somebody from the Republic and so on and so forth. So are we willing, ECOWAS going forward, are we really ready to integrate as a body, or people want to hold on to their small enclave, and when it's time for to support everybody, say, oh, Nigeria is the big brother. And that's why the funding issue is almost left to Nigeria, as you said, 60%. Because people say, oh, Nigeria, you have all the resources. Oh, you are the big brother. As if we are begging to keep ECOWAS together.
Okay, Dr. Mole, thank you very much. Paul Ejime, stay with us via Zoom from the United Kingdom. Let's return to the issue of the eco currency. The eco currency. Well, the deadline for its takeoff has been shifted again. There have always been issues around that common West African currency. A number of steps ought to have been taken. I was just wondering, I mean, is the ECO currency now a mirage, considering the financial and economic requirements for you to have a common currency in use by 15 countries? And a number of these countries still have their financial allegiance to their former colonial overlords. So is ECO currency a mirage, or do we just keep it as a prestige item? We return to it once in a while until at least we are sufficiently strong enough to say, yes, we can do this?
Yes, you will even say that our, the founding fathers of ECOWAS were ever more daring and ambitious than even than this generation. We have the technology, we have everything that can make us move faster, but we appear to be, struggling. ECO, the currency issue was talked about as having a single currency like euro, in EU. It was part of the what you call the ingredients of monetary union. Monetary union in the sense that if they were together, act together. There's nothing wrong in Nigeria with its size and its economy. Advancing the naira as what you have as a regional currency. But, how do you do that? They came up with this issue of ECO. They are supposed to go with the 7 countries, aside from Guinea that is doing its own, has its own Guinea franc. The other 7 in ECOWAS, they have from our colonies of France. They are tied to the CFA franc, while the others have their own national currencies, Nigerian naira and so on and so forth. And so they have talked about what you call the second monetary zone that was supposed to bring the Anglophone plus Guinea to join, so that at one point there will be a convergence. After using ECO, and then the ECO will now, everybody will come, those using CFA franc, you can now have a single currency. It's an ambitious project, but it's doable. It is just that lack of political will, and the fact that, let's not forget that, like any ethnic African, from colonialism and slavery, the past, we don't need to dwell on them, but there are still overhangs. Some of the members of ECOWAS are still beholden to their former colonial masters, and let's not fool ourselves that everybody wishes ECOWAS well to succeed, or even Nigeria. They know that if Nigeria gets it right, Africa will get it right. So some people in their very mischievous ways, they try to sabotage the fact that Nigeria cannot, and we are probably playing into their hands by not thinking outside the box, because we can't keep blaming outsiders for our problem. Africa is now more than 60 years old. So it is our leaders that should get it right. But what do you have? Some of them work in connivance with the outsiders. It's not just former colonial masters, those who to undo their own countries. ECO is one of it. You notice what happened, and the summit was had barely ended. Was it last year or 2 years ago, when one of the leaders left his colleagues without any explanation and went to Abidjan to announce with an European leader, France, that they were now going to replace CFA France with ECO. And then people are saying, what does that mean? It's like you are hijacking it. It was, telling 15 member country or region that you can go to hell And then it met with some resistance, but that has to be sustained. Nigeria, I can't stress this too much, what the ambassador, I'm glad that he has worked in the system, because what happens is that, we don't want to rock the boat, leave it, but we have to talk about it, that Nigeria needs to be strategic. There is nothing wrong in playing the big brother, but look at what the US is doing. Where you put your money, you have to determine what. Do you know that some member countries or their leaders know more about what is happening in the ECOWAS that is based in Nigeria than Abuja? And that shouldn't be so. And it is that lack of interest or, tepid, laissez-faire attitude that has allowed others to hijack the leadership, that Nigerians are, institutions there are struggling. So we have to get it right. There's nothing wrong in being a good neighbor, but you have to maximize whatever you have put there. ECO is struggling, and you blame ECOWAS people because they are also not as committed. There is no political will to drive it. There are criteria that you need to meet. Debt to GDP, fiscal and economic policies, and your tax, and all that needs to be met before you move towards that. It is doable, it can be achieved, but they are not moving with the kind of speed that you need. They are not.
Okay. Paul Ejima, there's some interference there in the background. We appreciate your contribution to our discussion this morning. But just before we wrap up, let's bring in Ambassador Bulus Lolo again. Well, the ECOWAS heads of state agreed to reposition the Council of the Wise. What does it signify that Nigeria's former president, Goodluck Jonathan, who has undertaken a number of missions on behalf of ECOWAS to some troubled West African countries, and has also been tapped as an election observer as well on the African continent, that is being asked now to chair this Council of the Wise. What does this mean, and what would you expect?
Well, for me to see former President Jonathan as the chair of the Council of the Wise in West Africa is sweet music. And sweet music because he is a former president of Nigeria. He also has the unique record of being that head of state of Nigeria that did not go to court to contest or defend his election. So his credibility as a Democrat stands him out. But beyond that, anytime the name Nigeria is mentioned positively, has to be a thing of joy to all of us. And then seeing now that the Council of the Wise has been rejuvenated, and with Nigeria leading the charge, I hope that we will see that as our contribution to preventive diplomacy. Because prevention, we say, is better than cure. And if the Council of the Wise lives up to its expectation, we will see less and less and less conflicts in West Africa, because as these conflicts are emerging, it is the Council of the Wise that will step in to nip it in the bud. But failing that, we may just be going back again to the same musical chairs, and who knows. But I pray that it will be a different music this time.
Indeed, it is a sweet music to the ears of Nigerians. Thank you so much, Ambassador Bulus Lolo, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's been a pleasure having your input on the program. And Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale, Department of Diplomacy and International Relations, Bayes University, thank you so much for coming on the program. And Paul Ejime, who joined us via Zoom from the UK, International Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that's it for the program today. We thank you for tuning in. We are back tomorrow same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, as we always say, take care of yourself. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Jumo Yusuf. Do have a great day. Goodbye.